Hello, Eben.
Hello, Bob.
I am so happy to talk with you. I always enjoy it.
Likewise, Bob. It's always a
I
pleasure.
think I think that this is one of the most interesting unscripted programs on the internet.
Yes, thank you so much.
Well, we're talking today about artificial intelligence and whether we should keep our books. And I think it's something everyone would be interested in hearing from you, how you look at this developing intellectual world and spiritual world. I guess I guess we should say you're in Copenhagen, I'm in Rome, and we are trying to create some type of a dialogue and conversation to assist people everywhere as they confront a new paradigm, we might say, a paradigm of artificial intelligence and sort of post Christian spirituality. And in this context, we're trying to offer a few insights, just a few fragments that will help people.
Yeah, that's true. So
So,
I have been looking into artificial intelligence since we spoke last week because I appeared to be rather positive, where I said that um, the artificial intelligence won't write or be able to convey any kind of message that has a soul in it. So
mm,
for that reason, I thought that people would not be totally overruled by it, because as human beings, we like that we feel the soul um, that in another person, because that's the way we connect with another human being, is through this kind of soul thing, that you feel that people are alive, they have integrity, they have a personality. And artificial intelligence do not have a personality. It just sort of put everything together that it has been programmed to know all about. And then of course it seems to be more quicker and smarter to put all the information together that we can do with in our brains. It can do it really quickly, and that's the way it can help us in many areas, for instance with medical diagnosis or other areas, environmental stuff, all these things. It could be a great help, but the
yes.
problem comes when it starts to have be programmed with certain opinions, or that it's being biased. But I still
Mm,
believe that artificial intelligence can only produce what it's told to do. So it's a
mm,
matter of how we make the programming. That's very important. But of course, it can be totally manipulated, and it can be biased if the wrong people starts to program artificial intelligence. And I
yes.
think there, of course, is also a moral, some kind of question about morality, because human beings, they're born with a certain way of seeing things in the light of truth, or we are enlightened beings by our faith, and we also are people, we are beings that wants to know what is the truth. And I think it's very important that it is a human being that is always the decision maker. So of course you can ask artificial intelligence to help you providing some information, but in the end it has to be a human being that will make the decisions. What I'm afraid about is, or afraid that is, that it could start to make decision for us, and if it has been programmed to have certain opinions, certain worldviews, then it becomes more tricky. And then, of course, it could be a huge manipulation. So it all depends on who's doing the programming, and what kind of information will you put into the algorithms, and who's going to make the decision about the way we sort of construct our society. Because if we leave that to a computer program that has been, let's say that we have an artificial intelligence that will leave out any kind of reference to Christianity, then you'll get some answers that will completely leave out any kind of reference to the faith. And that will give people a completely different worldview. So in that sense, you can really sort of create a new understanding of everything. And I think, well, that's what ideologies has been doing already for centuries. But here we just have the technology to spread it in all sorts of details in a way we haven't tried before. So of course, that's a problem. And also, what I'm also afraid is that it will actually, a lot of people will lose their jobs. It will, cause a big unemployment. Because, for instance, here in Denmark, one of our leading newspapers, a national newspaper that is more than 150 years old, they just fired like 16 journalists because robots can do their work. And so I guess it could mean that a lot of people will lose their jobs. And that's another bad thing about it. But also, I am a journalist myself. And since we spoke last week, I have been using a program, this kind of chat GPT, where you can ask any questions and then it will give you an answer, or you can rewrite a text. And I must say that it's like you really put on, I don't know what it's called in English, but this kind of boots where you can make longer, what do you call it, steps.
Yes.
Yeah, it
Strides.
means exactly. So it means that you can work much faster. And sometimes, let's say I have written an essay or an opinion piece, I could say, try to write this or to rewrite this in a different style, in a more creative way. And it comes out with really good results. So of course I have to go through the text myself because there is no soul in it. I see that it is computer written. But sometimes it comes up with good phrases. For instance, the other day I had to make a pitch for a podcast, and I told them what the podcast was about. I wrote some sentences myself, and I say, make a pitch. And it actually did a quite good job, coming up with sentences that was really very eloquent and very fluent. And then I can pick out what I want to use in my own text, and I can rewrite it with my own soul, so to say. And then it's a great tool. It's a great tool, I think. But I think when it comes to big decisions about how to organize our society and politics, if we let artificial intelligence do the decision making for us, I think we have to be very careful. Because, like I said in the beginning, it depends on who has programmed the intelligence.
Okay, so we've already moved slightly into a more nuanced position because you've tried using it and you found that it produced some interesting and even helpful results. So we are not taking a radical, primitive position that we shouldn't use computers or computer assisted intelligence, artificial intelligence algorithms. It might even turn out to be helpful. But what we are left with is the programming of the artificial intelligence, whether in the very programming something will be left out, some parameters, some distinctions, some of the things we've been familiar with in our lives through our education and the particular things that we believe. If all those things were left out and it was kind of a very technical, grammatically correct version of reality, we might find ourselves up against a very powerful, complex, eloquent program, which would nevertheless leave out things very dear to us and important to us, and perhaps things that we regard as essential. So we're right on the cusp now. Obviously, this has been developing for a number of years, many years, and we are now getting people saying, with the speed of the computers, NVIDIA has the chip, NVIDIA's stock price has tripled recently. Everyone is using it. This is driving up the stock market now, the way the .com drove it up in the year 2000, or the general rise in everything, the everything market of 2007-8 with the property market. So the stock market is driven up by the embrace of the artificial intelligence and the artificial intelligence chip. You're testing it. We're talking about it. And out in the larger world, people are saying we're nearly there. It may be happening right in front of our eyes, even as we speak today. Certain people will begin for the first time to use it. Tomorrow it'll be more. So we're right on the cusp of a new revolution in the speed and application of information, and perhaps in the direction and development of our intellectual and spiritual culture. And in this context, we want to be very fair, and we don't want to be radically obstructionist. And we even want to observe what it does. But the premise you've made is that if it has no soul, if it's not a person, even if it's super intelligent, we should remain in charge of it, and we shouldn't be somehow entangled by other people's programs into a mental and spiritual world that we didn't accept. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, for instance, if you consider that you made police robots that was really able to strike, and they were able to physically arrest people and hold them back, and they had not been programmed to have any kind of mercy. Let's say that a police robot that was just programmed to arrest people whenever there was some kind of problem or some, kind of situation where people were somehow into some kind of trouble or fight, and they needed to arrest somebody. Normally, police, they will, if they come to a kind of critical scene, they would, you know, of course, they will reason by their own reasoning what's going on here, and maybe they will listen to the people involved. Let's say it's violent somehow. But a police robot, which do not have that kind of programming and have absolutely no ability to understand other people's or human beings and their feelings, or that cannot really understand the situation from a normal human perspective, and it just have to be really hard and take these people into a car and drive them away, and they will be put into prison because they actually have no kind of feeling. They have no mercy, have no understanding of what is mercy, or a kind of gentleness, or trying to understand the situation from a human perspective. That could be really terrible.
Yeah.
Those kind of robots.
Okay, so Eben, you've given us the two parameters now. On the one hand, you're saying you've tried it, it can be helpful. And on the other hand, you've said if it wasn't given a type of human, loving, forgiving, caring, compassionate element, which is hard to give, if not impossible to give to a machine, which just grinds forward, we will have something that will threaten us in a very dangerous way, with a type of impossible prison, a prison we can't escape from. And it will have all the authority of millions of computer chips and millions of calculations. And it will say, you have no right to even question the decisions we're taking, because we've calculated a million times, and this is the right thing to do. I wanted to bring in a passage from Scripture, which I just was looking at, and it talks about strong delusion. And I have it right here. And it's from 2 Thessalonians, the letter of St. Paul. And he says, now concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ We ask you, brothers, not to be easily disconcerted or alarmed by any spirit or message or letter seeming to be from us, alleging that the day of the Lord has already come. Let no one deceive you in any way, for it will not come until the rebellion occurs, and the man of lawlessness, the son of destruction, is revealed. He will oppose and exalt himself above every so-called God or object of worship. And then he says, for the mystery of lawlessness is already at work, but the one who now restrains it will continue until he is taken out of the way. And then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord Jesus will slay with the breath of his mouth and annihilate by the majesty of his arrival. And the last sentence here, the coming of the lawless one will be accompanied by the working of Satan with every kind of power, sign, and false wonder, with every wicked deception directed against those who are perishing, because they refused the love of the truth that would have saved them. For this reason, God will send them a powerful delusion so that they believe the lie. I don't know if any of those words resonate with you. Do you have
Yeah, I have
some?
read, I have read that passage so many times, and I think it really applies to our time. And I think it's interesting that God would allow these people to be deluded because they did not, or they refuse to love God and to be loved by God. I think that's very telling. But it's, this is an old struggle, power struggle, that human mankind, together with Satan, think that they can establish their own world where God cannot interfere. And I think what we really have to be very alarmed about is this dehumanizing factor, because it's always, when Satan is at work, he always tries to dehumanize people. But first of all, he's trying to, give us the idea that this will be very helpful. This will be a really good idea. Like I said, artificial intelligence in many ways can be a good idea. It can help human beings. But then there is, of course, the danger that it will take over, or it will be programmed by the wrong people, by the wrong thinking, by the wrong morality. And like I said before, I think the crucial thing is that it does not have a soul. It's not a personal thing. It has no personal integrity. And that's where the dehumanizing factor come in. That if we let ourselves be governed by such an entity, it means that it's going to dehumanize everybody that is trying to follow what it says. And this is typically very demonic. It is this dehumanizing factor, because the fact is that Satan and all his demons, they hate human mankind and they want to destroy us. That's why we have to be very careful also with our own fallen nature. We have to be very concerned about that if we are using a tool like this, our own fallen nature can be, one of the biggest problem in all this, because we have this kind of, weak nature. It means that we can easily be deceived even by ourselves. So yeah, but in the end, we know also from scriptures that God is sovereign, and it can only happen to the extent that God allows it. That's a big mystery we don't understand.
Right.
But
Well,
that is a very important thing to remember as well. Evil can only do, or can only operate, as long as God allows it. For some mysterious reason we don't understand while we are here on this earth or in this life. We don't understand that big mystery.
well, what I've been struck by the last 2 weeks I've been working, and of course in Rome they're preparing a great synod. They released a synod on synodality, which will perhaps explore changing some church teachings. And that document was presented yesterday in Rome. Also, the day before, there was a little text by Pope Francis, which he wrote on the 400th anniversary of the birthday of Pascal, Blaise Pascal, perhaps the greatest mathematician of all time, one of the great mathematicians, and a man who had a mystical experience when he was 31 years old, one evening between about 10:30 and 12:30 in the evening, and he called it the Night of Fire, La Nuit du Feu. And he said he had been in the presence of what he had been seeking all his life, with all his mind, with all his heart. He had suddenly felt the presence of the divine. And the fact is that as the church proceeds and attempts to struggle with our modern world and what the church ought to teach, as we reflect on our ancestors and people like Blaise Pascal, and as we have this increasing emphasis on technology, which is really amazing how complex, how effective it is. Two comments came out in the past 2 months, which I dealt with in an editorial I just wrote. One by Elon Musk, saying he had spoken with one of the founders of Google several years ago when they were sitting up late talking, and this man said to him, "Our essential goal is to create God." And Elon Musk told that to Tucker Carlson in a television interview. Nobody has denied it. People have been writing about this for 2 months now. The interview was 2 months ago. And then 1 month ago, this Professor Harari from Israel was speaking in an interview in Lisbon, Portugal, with a prominent Portuguese intellectual. It was in a public theater. There were hundreds of people present. And he said, artificial intelligence can write a new Bible, which won't have any errors in it. And the whole world will look at it and yield to it and say, finally, we have a Bible written by supreme intelligence, an artificial intelligence Bible. Now we will know what to do and how to be. And because Musk speaks of the Google founders seeking to create God by piling up computer chips until they can memorize and calculate everything, and by Harari speaking of rewriting the Bible, I came to conclude that there is great interest among the powerful and the scientific minds of our time, but they leave out the holy, they leave out what is sacrificial, they leave out what is charity, what is love, and they seem to grasp locating all the pieces of reality here and there and having a kind of complete and total surveillance of everything, but there's no persons in it who are struggling to love and to draw close to absolute love, who is God. So it's as if the whole search of all of the people of faith for all these centuries is regarded as silly. And I think, therefore, that there's something missing in this intellectual scientific movement, which is so powerful and so well financed that it's coming forward to the fore here, so that even you and I are using it. So what do you think about what I just said?
First of all, I think that they want to create God, or they want to be God, and they want to create an intelligence that will take God's place, actually shows or proves the existence of God. Why would they be interested in creating something that is like God if they don't know that God is really, truly existing? And that is exactly the way it can be sort of proved that this is very demonic, because the demons know that God is real. They're not as stupid as the atheists in this world. They know that God exists, and that God exists, and they would do anything they can to become equal to him or trying to destroy what he has created. So what you just said, it's one big proof that God is real. And this is a fight between God and Satan, good and evil. And maybe this can wake up all the sleeping Christians around the world, all this, the sleepy Catholics, that if they want to create a new world that is like superior to God or like God's, it shows that God is real. And I think that's a very good point you just made. I just realized that this is exactly what it is by listening to what you just said. And, the Soviet Union had the same idea, that they couldn't create this big empire without God. And what happened? It all came crumbling down because it was built on a lie. I mean, even though that Satan and the demons has, extraordinary powers, they are still created by God. They don't exist by themselves. They are created beings just like you and me. They use fallen powers, but they are not sovereign to God's ultimate power. And we have to keep that in mind. They operate through fallen powers. It means they can be very destructive, but in the end, they still are created beings. They don't represent a new world that is completely detached from God, because they cannot be completely detached. Okay, they're thrown into hell, but Satan was still an angel created by God. So he does not equal God in any way. But of course, this is the old sin that is being repeated again and again and again since the Garden of Eden, that man wants to become like God. That was exactly what the serpent said to Eve. You can become like God. So here you go. It's simply the old sin that is being repeated over and over again. But you're right. This time they have an enormous technology, and they have a very skillful tool and a very advanced technology that can make it a lot worse. But we know also from scriptures that there will be a final battle between God and Satan. But it has been going on for centuries, and we're in the same struggle. And if the church is not really fighting against this evil, then we are in a bad situation. So I guess this is really the responsibility also of the Catholic Church to step up now, to help human mankind.
Okay.
And to understand what it really is that we're up against.
Right. Well, we've touched on some very important topics, and we can't really explore all of them. I do think that we had given to this program the title, The Books You Keep, because at the end of our last conversation, we were saying, what if the internet goes down? Or what if the algorithm says...
Bob, sorry to interrupt you, but I just want, before we go to the mentioning of the books, I just want to refer to an article I found by a Catholic journalist who tried to ask artificial intelligence about the Eucharist. And if you would allow me, I'll just read it out. It's not very long, but I just have to put on my glasses to read the small letters. He asked the artificial intelligence, in 900 words or less, explain what the Eucharist is and what it isn't, according to the teachings of the Catholic Church. It's very long, so I'll go to the last part of it, which is just a summary. And it says, in summary, the Eucharist is a sacrament of the Catholic Church that is considered to be a real and substantial presence of Christ. Through the process of transubstantiation, Exactly, thank you. The bread and wine used in the Eucharist are believed to become the actual body and blood of Christ. Catholics are encouraged to receive the Eucharist frequently, but only if they are properly prepared and in a state of grace. The Eucharist is not a mere symbol or metaphor, nor is it a means of manipulation or control. Rather, it is a gift from God that is offered freely to all who seek it with faith and reverence. And then the author of the article writes, "It's amazing to me that artificial intelligence can understand something that more than a third of Catholics in in the United States can't, that the Eucharist is Christ himself." So, just to say that this article, what I just read aloud, was really according to the teachings of the church.
Yeah.
So still, it is programmed. It's just to give another example. Now we're talking about doom and gloom. I just want to give this example to say that still it can sort of explain things that many Catholics are not able to, because maybe they don't believe in it or they don't know what it is. Like you said, more than the 1/3 of all Catholics in the United States cannot write like this about the Eucharist.
Mhm.
So that is actually something that is quite good. You can make artificial intelligence write such an article about the Eucharist. Don't you think so?
Yes, I think it's a remarkable aid, and I therefore am developing my own position on this matter. We probably should use as best we can this technology and do more programs and find that the speed 10 times, 20 times, 100 times will give us the strength of 10 or 20 of 100 minds, and it will just be us two. But by asking the right questions of the internet mind.
Actually, I was at a seminar how to use these chat GPT systems, and the teacher, who's a journalist, said that what it's all about is the way you sort of ask. I mean, the information you give to the artificial intelligence when you ask a question. That is really extremely important, because what you put into it is what you get out of it. So the more detailed you are, the more you kind of instruct it, the better the result will be. So it also really depends on what kind of information you give it, or the way you instruct it,
Yeah.
what will come out of it. So the result
Well,
can be poor, it can be really good. And I don't think as a writer, as a journalist, that you can keep up with the pace of other writers now if you don't use it, because then it will
hmm,
simply take you too long to write an essay. For instance, if you have like a website with blog posts, you can produce 4 or 5 a day using this system. You can just give all the information to this artificial intelligence, and then you can rewrite it very quickly yourself. Just go through it, because there can be some kind of errors, or there can be some kind of things that are not logical or whatever, but easily you can rewrite it. So you can produce a lot more. And if you
hmm,
don't use it, I don't see how you can keep up with the pace of other
yeah.
writers.
Well, now we've moved all the way to a positive position. Let's try to work with it as best we can, but we be cautious about one thing: is if something is not on the internet, if it's never been fed into this grinder of ideas and thoughts, it will never come out. It has to have been
That's
loaded in before.
That's true. And that's where
And
the danger comes in, because you can in the future you can remove things, or you can avoid giving certain information.
yeah, absolutely. And so, really, to preserve our tradition, we have to be even more vigilant than we've
But
ever been before.
I mean, already artificial intelligence is choosing the content you see online. Whenever you Google something, or you go on YouTube, or even your Facebook, it's designed for you, because my Facebook page will not be the same as your Facebook page. So already artificial intelligence and algorithms are, deciding for us what kind of information we get when we open YouTube, or we open Google or Facebook. So it is already there. And I think still you see a lot of critical people that are still, doing their own reasoning. So, but of course, this is a kind of step up where you don't know how much it can be manipulated. That's true.
Well, what you just said, I'd read something about that as well, that it is individualized to such a degree that each of us may actually see a different internet. In other
Absolutely.
words, I may be interested in American baseball, and there may be a score from the Baltimore Orioles that will come up somehow as I look through scroll through something. You will never see that at all. It just never will come
Exactly.
up. And then with regard to church teaching, there may be elements of this. We're still sort of, you and I are pretty new to this, but I have read that the internet will actually react to what we bring to it or what we've already been looking for and reply to us with that pre-selected choice. So you will find different things than I will find. We won't even see some things. I won't see some things that will come up for you. And likewise, you will not see some things that would come up for me. And
Exactly.
imagine all over the world that will be equally true for everyone.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's creating, if you take a dark view of it, it's creating a nice little cell within which you or I are content to kind of bounce ideas off and back that we've already had with new ideas that the internet or the algorithm selects for us. But it will just be an isolated cell, and it won't be shared. It won't be a community.
Yeah, I would highly recommend you and all the viewers to watch a documentary that was on Netflix. I hope it's still there. It's called The Social Dilemma. And it's all about this. And it's really interesting. It's a really well-made documentary where people who work for Facebook and other of these big companies, they really are giving a warning about what's going on and how they sort of manipulate and twist your mind with these kind of information, or the way it is organized, that you only get information that seems to fit into your profile. You never get the same information as perhaps your friend or your family. It's totally different information that we're being fed with. So it's really interesting to see The Social Dilemma. I found it on Netflix, and if it's not anymore on Netflix, I'm sure you can find it on YouTube.
All right.
It's really a great
Okay, so
documentary.
that's something people can look at. I also wanted to say, before we continue on this, that we have a couple of things that we'd like people to know about. We're taking a trip to Lebanon in September. We have a lot of interest in the Christian community in Lebanon, which is under pressure now. We want to support that community. We have a great devotion to a great Lebanese saint named Father Charbel, a monk. And the cedars of Lebanon are mentioned in Scripture. Jesus walked into southern Lebanon, visiting Tyre and Sidon when he was ministering publicly. So if anyone would like to go with us on a pilgrimage to Lebanon, please contact us. We are also thinking of visiting this summer, in late August, Garabandal in Spain. And then we have other pilgrimages on our website which people can look at. And then I would encourage people to sign up for the letters that I write, Moynihan letters, and then for the magazine Inside the Vatican. And then I'm thinking we're going to develop this podcast. I think you're going to do things even that will attract attention around the world.
Yeah, I have to wait and see if I will be in the algorithms. Who knows?
Well, we had talked about books because we were thinking the internet might go down. The algorithms won't allow certain books to remain read. They'll be forgotten. They'll be in print, but they won't be electronically accessible. And I was thinking, this is a shame, and therefore we wanted to encourage people not to throw away their books and to try to gather a small library, which would be a kind of almost sacred space where they have the faith, the hope, the love of prior generations and not be lost. And I wondered what we might suggest to people as some titles to put in that library.
Yeah, a few years ago when I was visiting Moscow, I had a meeting with a monk and a priest, which is in a monastery right in the center of Moscow. And he, reminded me about his youth when it was still the Soviet Union. And he said there were copies of books that were circulating in certain groups of friends. And you could get a copy of a book. Of course, that was completely censored and forbidden. And you only had one night to read it. The next day, you would have to deliver it to somebody else. And he said, so people were staying up all night reading that book because that was the only chance you had to get that kind of knowledge from that book. And I think maybe we're going to face the same situation. Let's say that artificial intelligence is being fed with, certain information, and there are other information that is being blocked. So we can't get that information online anymore. And people have just thrown away their books because they only have ebooks, or they have, depended so much on the internet, and suddenly they can't find that book anymore. So I think it was Tucker Carlson who said the night before he got fired from Fox News, where he gave a talk at the Heritage Foundation in Washington. He actually said as well, don't throw away your books because you might need them one day, he said. Don't throw away your all the copies of books you have in your library. And I was just, trying to throw away a lot of books because I have too many books. And so I'm trying now to consider keeping my library, even though it's getting bigger and bigger, and I don't know where to put all that books I have. But
Okay, well, let's try to help. We'll have a kind of a clearinghouse. We'll at least make a catalog, and I'll do my library, you do yours, and others. So if somebody could take a book, we could share it, and your library wouldn't overwhelm you and overwhelm your space.
Exactly. You need to have a lot of friends with a lot of books, so eventually you can circulate books like they did in the Soviet Union. Yes, exactly.
Okay, so we could call the preserve the book movement or something.
Yeah.
Keep your library. Catherine sends us a note.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's a book I wanted to mention called The Message in the Bottle.
Sounds familiar.
Well, I once went to California and I stood on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, and I wrote a message in a bottle and I threw it. And I don't think anyone has ever picked it up because I put my address in there and my note. And I think I had some sentiment of friendship. Contact me, best wishes, contact me if you receive this message. So a message in the bottle is something that floats around the ocean and maybe is picked up or maybe isn't. But it also has to do with something like the gospel. The message may be that a prophet, a man, the Son of God, lived and healed people, was executed, and rose from the dead. This is the message in the bottle par excellence. And many Christians have preached this message over the centuries. Many have been mocked and ridiculed, and many have been executed, arrested and executed. Why is this message so controversial? Because it seems to escape from the box of our temporal world and speak of eternity, and from the limitations of our temporal physical order, and to speak of the metaphysical, of the eternal and of the sacred, and of God. So this book I read when I was about 20 years old. It affected me profoundly. In some ways, I'm a product of this book because it discussed this message and how it is different from all other messages.
Who is the author?
The author is Walker Percy, Percy. And he was an American who was not a Catholic but converted to Catholicism after he had caught tuberculosis in medical school working with certain samples of tissue. And he himself caught tuberculosis in the late 1940s and went to a sanatorium in upstate New York. He was from Louisiana. He became a medical doctor. He lived through this illness. He was really, for almost 2 years, flat on his back. And he read all sorts of books, which is what we're talking about. Because books communicate ideas, communicate souls. And he then decided that his life was too narrow, too limited. His horizon was too narrow and limited, and he wanted to seek the eternal God. And so he started studying the Catholic faith, and he became a Catholic. And he became a great Catholic novelist in America. And very real, very aware of human failings, and yet always holding up this ideal that we can turn towards what is real, to what is good, to what is holy, even if it's a difficult task often for us. And in the message in the bottle, he talks about the peculiar character of human consciousness and our desire for meaning, our love of meaning. And he refers to the logos, which is the word that we always speak of because it's the word for God. And it's also the word for Christ. Because St. John, in his gospel, where he's trying to tell the message, says, in the beginning was the word, but in Greek, the word that he uses is logos. So in the beginning was the logos, and the logos was with God, and the logos was God. So the question becomes, how do we find this logos? And of course, the logos in Greek is the root of all these words that have knowledge and study and reason in them, like theology, logos, theologos, L-O-G-Y, and biology, the study of life, theology, the study of God, anthropology is the study of man. So it's not just the study of, though, it's the reason or the meaning or the logic of each thing. It's when the mind engages with something and examines it, kind of almost consumes it by the amazing faculty of human consciousness. And he says that it's something very special that human beings have. It's a quality that raises us to a pinnacle of dignity. He says many creatures know things, like they know that it's a sunny day or that they're entering into water. But what man has is the ability to know that he knows. It's a double infolding or a double folding back. We know that we know that it's a sunny day. We can walk down knowing that we are walking down the street. And this means we are conscious beings. It means we have a level of complexity that creates us as persons. And from this spring all of our other qualities of our humility, our pride, our self-consciousness, our desire. And he goes on to say that what Christianity gives is an incorporation of the wandering, lost human person who doesn't see a meaning in this world into ultimate meaning. And if I were to start somewhere on a search, I might start with The Message in the Bottle by Walker Percy. And I have a copy of the book, and I think it would be a nice book for people to start a collection in their library. So I've left you speechless.
No, I was just waiting for you to ask me something, but
Well,
for a moment.
do you have a book in your mind that's influenced you deeply that you think everyone should maybe take a look at?
Well, of course, I would think that if you have scriptures, you have everything. But, I think for me, it would be perhaps writings of the saints, um, the revelations of Saint Bridget, the writings of Catherine of Siena, John of the Cross, mystical literature. And if it would be novels, I probably would start to study Dostoyevsky, because he has really written about what is a human being and all the mysterious ways that a human being works. And he was a
Yeah.
great psychologist. So he really has a kind of insight about human actions, human mind, the way human beings are. I think any novel that would be giving me a deeper understanding of what is human would be a favorite of mine in a time where we would face more dehumanizing. Um,
Right.
so, so I
Even
think,
I had written a little note right here, and I had written Crime and Punishment and Brothers Karamazov
exactly,
by Fyodor
yeah,
Dostoevsky. And both Pope Benedict, on more than one occasion, and Pope Francis have also said that Dostoevsky is a writer worth reading because he deals with the complexity and depth of the human person.
exactly,
Um,
exactly.
so I share that with you. And I could just reflect inside of the brothers Karamazov, there are three brothers, if I recall. There's Dmitri, who's a military man. There's Alyosha, who's a kind of monk, a holy man who retires from this world. And then there's Ivan, who's a kind of intellectual, almost a revolutionary, a brilliant ideologue. And these three brothers represent the three characteristics, I think, of each person. Each of us has a kind of part of us that wants to retire, almost to live a religious life very quietly in silence, like Alyosha. And each of us also wants to be very active at times, especially when we're young, accomplish things, like Dmitri, filled with passion. And then each of us has this kind of intellect which it wants to figure things out and understand and control things mentally. But it's Ivan in the middle of the book who finally tells the story of the Grand Inquisitor, the most famous story probably in all the writings of Dostoevsky. And you remember what happens in that story?
No, go ahead, tell it.
Jesus comes back to the
Yeah,
world and he wants to tell people here's the path to God. It may involve suffering, self sacrifice, but it will save you. And Ivan says the Grand Inquisitor, he's telling the story, sees this man preaching in the streets and he orders his soldiers to arrest him. And he brings him in for a conversation. And he says, you're asking too much of human beings. You're asking too much. You're dangerous. You're dangerous. We, in the structure of the institutional church, have decided the best thing is to give very narrow guidelines to people. Don't let them make their own decisions. But you're kind of offering them the freedom to decide what to sacrifice and who to love. And he says, you are a threat. And then he arrests him and he executes him. So the Grand Inquisitor represents a type of institutional power, which in that case was representing the institutional church. But in our case, OG today, it represents the technocratic globalist leadership, and it represents the kind of algorithm creating, planning arm of the World Economic Forum. And what they're proposing for us is a world just like what the Grand Inquisitor was telling Jesus, that has no place for simple human love. And it's a very productive world. It's a very happy world, but there's nothing heroic and personal in it.
Well, but there are so many novels. I was also thinking about Victor Hugo, Les Miserables, which is also a wonderful story about what mercy can do, or forgiveness, not even forgiveness, but just kindness, mercy can do to a person who is convicted. And I think there are so many great novels. So I think everybody has his or her own taste, what kind of period, what kind of style you like. But anything that, like you just said, goes into the depth of what is a human being is worth keeping in your library. I think that is the main message for me, is that keep whatever tells good stories about being a human being.
What about the Confessions of Saint Augustine?
Oh yeah, of course. That's one of my favorites as well. Yeah, that's also a very important book.
Saint
Yeah.
Augustine is on a journey that goes year after year after year as he tries to find out what is the best, most profound truth that he should adhere to. And he takes a long time to come. He confesses that he takes a long time to come to the church. So it's a dramatic story. And in the back of that book, actually, he has a tremendous, I think chapter 11, he has a tremendous discussion of the nature of time. And in that discussion, he makes us realize that our existence in the temporal world is a fragile one because we live between memory and anticipation. And the present moment, which is, for example, the moment of our conversation right now, is preceded by past and moving into a future through a very short duration series of moments that are instantly moving into the past. And if we use a language, we say what is what is real. But we don't have what is. We have what is passing. And Augustine says, therefore, the human heart longs for the eternal, for what does not pass away, even through our very fingers. This conversation that we're having is already an hour ago that we started it. That no longer exists. And after we end this conversation, doesn't yet exist. So the present moment that we have is an instant. This is the fragility of human consciousness. We exist in a series of moments that pass away. But we long for a deeper, richer existence, which would be eternal. And we were made for that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a very important work, which has influenced Western culture enormously.
Yeah.
So yeah, that
And
would be a good one to have on your bookshelf as well.
yeah. And then I also like Against All Heresies by
Oh yeah.
Ignatius of Irenaeus of Lyon. But in that work, there's only one phrase that I love most of all, which I always like to recite it. The glory of God is man alive, but the life of man is the vision of God. So therefore, that is a perfect circle. What is God's glory? God made these creatures, which we are, men, women. We have consciousness and we are fallible. But when we are living, we are God's glory. And but the life of man, so for us to live our lives, the life of man is the vision of God. So
Absolutely.
we don't fully live if we are always looking downward or sort of inward towards the temporal and towards what is partial. But if we have a vision of God as the Holy One, uh, the one who draws us toward him and towards perfect goodness, truth, beauty, and holiness, that inspires in us a movement of life which enables us to live. Anyway.
Yeah, that's so true.
Okay. So we're going to put these lists of books together. We'll try to increase them and we'll suggest them to people. And we'll try to create maybe 100 or so books in the library. It will be our own version of the great books. Would you like to help do that?
Absolutely. I think we can add books every time we talk. We can prepare a few titles for each episode that we're making in the next couple of months.
Okay. So we're facing a number of challenges, but you're also a kind of inspiration to people. I think we've been receiving letters about you saying that when people hear you talk, they're inspired because you speak such a profound way. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I think it's a gift I have got from God. I don't really, I'm not aware of it. I'm just doing what I feel I should do. And if it turns out that people feel encouraged by what I say, I think it's because it's a gift I have been given. It's not because I have planned it to be like that. That's, my own explanation. It's simply a gift I have been given.
Okay. Well, you're a gift to us, and you give us hope because a lot of us don't find too many of the leading intellectuals of Europe to have your level of profundity. And I don't think there's anyone like you in the entire continent.
I think it's because if you look to all the social media platforms, it's all about doom and gloom, and it's very easy to be negative. And I've been extremely negative myself, being a columnist for almost 25 years. So I know exactly how you get attracted to the sort of, I wouldn't say energy, but it's a kind of energy that is in being negative, that you point out all the things that are wrong. And it gives you a certain energy, but in the end, you feel like you're going to suffer from a burnout because of all this negativity. So at a certain time, I sort of stepped out a little bit and tried to look at more hopeful things, because everybody today on social platforms, social media platforms, can tell you what's wrong, but very few can tell you what's right. Most people are occupied with what's wrong. If you go to Twitter, it's all about, all these voices about what's wrong.
Hmm.
And you feed this kind of negative monster that is already at work by sort of putting words to all the things that are wrong. Of course, we should face the truth, and we should not try to ignore it, and we should, be very open about that we should know exactly what's wrong. But if we keep talking about what's wrong and never about what is right, evil would probably prevail, because that we're feeding it, giving it our energy all the time, our attention. We always have our attention on what's negative, what's wrong, what's evil, what's doom and gloom. And then we start to go down the spiral ourselves, go down the drain ourselves, because we only put word to what is negative. And I've become very aware of that you need to, even though it's may sound like there is no hope anymore, or now the economic forum is going to take over the whole world. Yeah, maybe, but scriptures is telling you something else, gives you hope that in the end, those people will be defeated. So I think it's very important just to put out this kind of positive word. I'm really not a positive thinker. I'm very much a person that can be anxious and concerned, and I can see all the negative things. I have been living from seeing negative things. It has been my way of earning a living for many years, just telling people what's wrong. But I realized that it's a very dangerous energy to play with, because in the end, you just get caught up by negative things. And so you shouldn't really play chess with evil. You should renounce evil and tell people in an upbuilding way what is the right thing to do, and which gives them hope.
Okay. And what is that right thing to do which gives them hope?
Of course, it is to have a relationship with God, to have a certain um, intimacy with God, and to have a relationship with God. And then, of course, try to do good. Try to do good. Try not to fight evil with evil, but fight evil with good. Love your enemy. You stick to the truth, and you sort of surround yourself with beautiful things, like goodness, truth, and beauty, which is basically what is the Catholic teaching will teach you to do. So you try to do good. I think it's very important. Of course, you need, of course, to have a relationship with God, have faith in God, but you
Mhm.
also need to do good and to go
Even
against your own weak nature.
okay, even you're working on a book now, and you're hoping in the future to complete this book and then give talks about what you're going to say in the book. Can you give us any insight into this, or is it too early?
Well, it's about how to find meaning in a world where we have the pandemic of meaninglessness, because I think this is a new pandemic in the Western world, that people don't know anymore what is the meaning of life. So I'm trying to go against what you could call a world that is completely entrapped into psychological thinking, and where
Mhm.
psychology has become a kind of idol, where people are very self-absorbed, the self-worship, and it doesn't lead you to the right place, because a lot of people, having been doing this kind of therapy for many years, they don't know what is the meaning of life. So trying to make people look in a different direction.
And where can people find your writing or anything about you on the internet?
Well, I have my Facebook profile with my name, and I have a Twitter account. I even have a YouTube channel with my name, but right now I'm not uploading a lot of things. But of course, there is an archive, so you can always go and look at it. But while I'm writing, I'm a little bit more low key, but I will eventually come back. But of course, my YouTube channel has a lot of good interviews, so I'll encourage people to go and have a look. It's called Tranholm Talks, and you can always go and have a look and see my interviews with different people. And I also made a kind of like opinion pieces where I was giving a kind of update on current affairs and things that were going on in the world.
All right. Well, Eben, I wish you a very good upcoming week. We'll talk to you again. And I'd like you to write and use all the technology that you need, but keep
Mm.
your total control from your own soul, your own mind over all the writing, and work very quickly. And I expect you're going to come out with a wonderful book.
Thank you so much, Bob. And thank you for having me on today.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.